Greetings and felicitations. I would like to thank you and welcome you to this 8th video. In this 8th video, what we are going to do is we're going to look at several problematic aspects of Dr. White's presentation and problems with the modern day textual critical views. But before we get into that, I would like to point out that when I'm talking about texts, when I'm talking about Byzantine texts, Alexandrian texts, I'm referring to the modern critical view of text types, something that I don't believe. And so when I'm using the word texts or manuscripts, I'm referring to the modern textual view of text types. When I'm talking about readings, I'm talking about what I say in the genealogical argument. That is, we have the autographs and then we have a tree or a pyramid, if you like. All the copies of that autograph, whether they're Alexandrian, Byzantine, or Western, or Caesarean, or whatever, are found within this one tree, not these separate trees that you find in the text, in the critical text views. So those, what I'm talking about is those readings, for instance, that could be Alexandrian and Byzantine in matter, that uphold the Textus Receptus. This, for instance, is Stephen's 1550. It is, in fact, a critical edition of Stephen's 1550, done in 1877. And what it does is it has Stephen's 1550 in it, and then it has in the apparatus, it has differences that you'll find in Lockman, and Tregelles, and Griesbach, and Wordsworth, and I think also Beza 1624 as well. So this is a critical edition of the Textus Receptus. It's called the Englishman's Greek New Testament. And it's Textus Receptus, it's Stephen's 1550, which is what I hold to. And the apparatus shows the differences that you'll find in the various manuscripts. But anyway, those readings that you find in the one tree that uphold the Stephen's 1550, for example, the Textus Receptus, whether they are Alexandrian texts or Byzantine texts, it's those readings that you'll find that I'm talking about in this. And those readings that uphold the critical text that you find in that one tree, all right, are the readings that you'll find, whether they're Alexandrian or Byzantine, Western, whatever, that you find that support this. So when I say Alexandrian readings, I'm talking about those readings that support the critical text. Byzantine readings, those readings that support the Textus Receptus. So let's move on. One of the principles of modern textual criticism is the view that is called the harder reading is to be preferred. Now, I believe Dr. White, Dr. Wallace, Dr. Carson, many evangelicals, those who hold to the critical text, those who read the NIV, the ESV, the NASB, all believe that the Bible is inspired, infallible, and inerrant. They will all say that. I believe that firmly. The problem is that in the 1800s, this modernism, and that's where I get the word modern textual criticism, it's modernism, came about, and they did not believe that the Bible is inspired, infallible, inerrant. They believed it was a book just like any other book, and they developed this philosophy, a text critical philosophy, that brings in human error into the sacred scriptures. And we find this in particularly at one particular verse that we'll talk about in just a minute. This philosophy is what I am attacking, what I don't believe. It's a rationalistic, scientific philosophy that is embraced by most evangelicals today, even though evangelicals will not believe the presuppositions of Westcott and Hort or those who hold to it, Bruce Metzger, Bart Ehrman, etc. So the verse that we're going to look at is Luke chapter 4, verse 44. In it, the critical text says, or writes, that Jesus went into the synagogues of Judea. This is picked up by the NIV, the ESV, the NASB, and most of the modern translations. The problem with this is that Jesus was not in Judah at the time. Jesus was in Galilee. This was a time in Luke 4:44 that Jesus' ministry was in Galilee. It was a Galilean ministry. He didn't go into Judah at all. And that's the problem with that particular verse. Dr. Metzger defends this verse by saying, well, the Sinaiticus has it, and some of the Greek texts have it as well, that Jesus went into the synagogues of Judah, and that's he defends it that way. He also defends it in his book, The Text of the New Testament, by saying it's the harder reading. The harder reading is to be preferred, in their opinion, because scholars wouldn't put a harder reading in. In other words, if it's original, the original writers wanted it to be harder to be understood than normal. I don't agree with that, obviously, and I think it's kind of weird. But if the harder reading is to be preferred, then they're saying that the intention of the writers, the original autographs, was that it was supposed to be a harder reading, which doesn't make any sense to me. So anyway, problems with this view is the very fact that it's factually an error, that Jesus was not in Judah at the time. In fact, throughout the whole book, chapter 4, Jesus is in Galilee, and in chapter 5 he's in Galilee. He's at the Lake Gennesaret, and he's at several other cities in Galilee. He's never in Judah at the time. So it's a factual error. But there's even more of a problem here. The Reformed view of understanding or interpreting Scripture is by the Scripture itself. The infallible means of interpreting the Scripture is by the Scripture itself. So when there's a problem, or when we have an unclarity in one verse, we can look at other verses, and we'll be able to come to a reasonable understanding of what the problematic verse is. So when we take a look, for instance, at Mark 1:39, and there's a passage in Matthew as well that cites this particular aspect of Jesus' ministry. But Mark 1:39 I'm using because in it says that Jesus went into all these synagogues of Galilee. And that passage in Mark 1:39 is upheld by the critical text. The critical text will actually say Jesus went into all these synagogues of Galilee. And this agrees with the Textus Receptus. Stevens 1550 says the same thing. The King James Version says the same thing. The NIV says the same thing. The ESV and the NASB all say the same thing at Mark 1:39. The problem is the difference found in Luke 4:44. Now, the majority of the manuscripts, the Greek manuscripts, uphold Luke 4:44 as saying that Jesus went into the synagogues of Galilee. Not only do the majority of them, but some of the great uncials, the Alexandrian manuscript, D, for example, Delta upholds it. I think it's Phi upholds it in Gamma as well. All of these great uncial manuscripts, which are Alexandrian texts, an older text, are upholding the Textus Receptus. Now, Erasmus and Stephanus didn't have any idea these manuscripts. They were just using the manuscripts that were in front of them, and they came to the conclusion that Luke 4:44 says that Jesus went into all the synagogues of Galilee, and this is consistent. This is the correct understanding, and that's the original of what Luke wrote. So not only does the critical text at this point create a factual error that Jesus was in Judah when it was his Galilean ministry, but it also creates a contradiction in the Bible. And this is a real contradiction. This isn't something you can talk yourself out of. When Luke 4:44 says in the critical text that Jesus went into the synagogues of Judah, and at Mark 1:39 it says something exactly different, then you have a contradiction, and you can't get around it. So this philosophy that is used, the harder reading is to be preferred, in previous ones, the shorter reading, genealogy, conflation, the older manuscripts, all of this philosophy that is brought up by the critical text men is a false philosophy. It is incorrect. It's producing a text that is pushing people away from the original autographs, creating errors and contradictions in the Bible. And the thing is, the reason why I'm so strong on this is that Bruce Metzger and the committee that created the Tregelles, as well as Tischendorf, and all of these men, and Westcott and Hort, are conscious. They're consciously doing this. They know that the other reading will be consistent with the rest of the Bible and is in fact the original reading of Luke. But they are using this philosophy in order to inject error and contradiction in the Bible. And this is picked up by the NIV, the ESV, the NASV, all the other translations. Now, I'm not saying that those who read the NIV, the ESV, and the NASB and the other translations that hold this believe that the Bible has errors in it. What you are is you're supporting a philosophy that believes that the Bible has errors in it, and that believes that the Bible is simply a book. And I believe that Dr. White, Dr. Wallace, Dr. Carson are innocent as well in this matter, because I don't believe that they are cognizant of this. And this is one of the reasons why I'm producing these videos. So anyway, I have spent too much time on this. If you want more information, feel free to ask, send me an email, whatever. I will produce a new video. I will answer your emails. So let's go to the next view. Athanasius of Alexandria, and I have to be short on this. Athanasius of Alexandria is something that Dr. White likes to talk about. However, a recent quantitative analysis of the Athanasius's citations of the Greek New Testament show that in the Catholic epistles, Athanasius is quoting Byzantine manuscripts. And this is a problem with those who hold to the critical texts and believe that Athanasius is orthodox. And I believe that Athanasius is orthodox. I believe he was a strong defender of the faith, and I believe that we need more men like Athanasius today. However, when we take a look, Gerald Donker's book, the Apostolos in the sightings of in Athanasius, he points out that the quantitative analysis shows that in the Catholic epistles that Athanasius is citing about 5 or 6 specifically, uniquely Byzantine readings. Now, they're calling them texts, but that's not the case. Donker gets around this by using a multivariate view of Athanasius' citations, and says essentially, and I'm simplifying, that since 99% of Athanasius' citations are Alexandrian, then we can just regard these few Byzantine citations as being Alexandrian as well, and that's just not the case. You have to deal with reality, not with some kind of statistical verbiage. Another reason that is cited is that, well, the Byzantine scribes were familiar with the Byzantine manuscripts, and therefore they are citing Byzantine manuscripts readings. If that's the case, then the majority of Athanasius's citations should be Byzantine, or at least a large number of them, not 5 or 6 citations in the Catholic epistles. So that is incorrect. Those are 2 of the problems that I'm pointing out, and hopefully we'll get into some more in the next video. My time is slowly coming to an end. So I thank you very much for watching this video, and may God bless you. And I pray that God will use the truth to change your minds and hearts if you are in the camp of the modern critical views. And I pray that truth will come out. And may God bless you. And this video is for Christ and Christ alone.